Imagine opening your bank statement at the kitchen table, coffee in hand, and noticing a small line near the bottom that says monthly maintenance fee. It's not a huge number, maybe $8, maybe $12. You almost skip right past it because $8 doesn't feel like much. But then you think back, was that charge on last month's statement too? And the month before that? You start doing the math in your head, and suddenly a number that felt small starts to feel a lot bigger. That's the moment a lot of retirees have had, usually without even realizing it's happening until years have gone by. And it's exactly why we're talking about this today. If you enjoy practical tips that help retirees protect their money, consider subscribing to Retiree's Guide. Because we post videos like this to help you stay a step ahead of the little things that quietly chip away at your savings. Here's the truth that most people don't think about until it's too late. A bank account isn't just a place to store your money. It's a relationship. And like any relationship, some of them cost you more than they give back. And when you're living on a fixed income, whether that's Social Security, a pension, or savings you worked decades to build, every dollar that leaves your account without your full understanding matters more than it used to. What makes this especially tricky is that these fees rarely announce themselves. Nobody calls you up and says, by the way, we're going to start charging you $8 a month starting today. Instead, it usually happens quietly, buried in a paragraph of a terms and conditions document you may have skimmed years ago and never thought about again. Banks aren't necessarily trying to hide anything from you. It's simply built into how the account works from day one, and most of us never go back and reread that fine print once we've settled into a routine with our bank. Think about how banking used to work for a lot of us. You picked a bank, maybe because it was close to home, maybe because a parent or a spouse had banked there for years, maybe because a coworker recommended it decades ago. You opened the account, you got your checks, your debit card arrived in the mail, and from that point forward, banking became something you simply didn't think about very often. It became part of the background of your life, like the route you drive to the grocery store. And that's exactly the problem, because things change. Banks change their fee structures. New account types come along that didn't exist when you first opened yours. And unless you go looking, you'd never know the difference. So let's talk about what's actually happening with bank fees in 2026, what the real numbers look like, and what you can do about it. Because in just a moment, I'm going to walk you through exactly how these fees stack up. And there's one mistake in particular that even careful, financially savvy retirees are still making without knowing it. Let's start with the basics, because understanding how fees work is the first step to protecting yourself from them. A monthly maintenance fee, sometimes called a service fee, is a charge some banks apply just for having an account with them. It doesn't matter whether you use the account 5 times or 50 times that month. If you don't meet certain requirements, the fee shows up automatically. Now here's where it gets interesting, and this is something a lot of people don't realize. These fees are not the same everywhere. They can vary quite a bit depending on which bank you use. For example, some accounts marketed specifically to seniors and retirees, like a Regions Bank 62 Plus Life Green checking account, carry a monthly fee of around $8. A Cadence Bank Heritage checking account carries a similar fee, also around $8 a month. Old National Bank's Classic checking account charges close to $8 as well, just under that mark. On the other hand, there are accounts out there, including some designed specifically with older adults in mind, that charge absolutely nothing. $0 a month, no maintenance fee at all. Think about that difference for a moment. $8 a month doesn't sound dramatic on its own. But multiply that by 12 months, and you're looking at close to $100 a year, every year, for as long as you keep that account open. Multiply that across 5, 10, 15 years of retirement, and you start to see how a fee that felt like pocket change becomes a meaningful amount of money. Money that could have stayed in your pocket, or better yet, kept growing quietly in a savings account instead. And it's worth remembering that this fee doesn't buy you anything extra. It's not paying for better customer service. It's not paying for a higher interest rate. In many cases, it's simply the cost of keeping the account open, full stop. That's an important distinction, because when we pay for something, we usually expect to get something back in return. A gym membership gets you access to equipment. A streaming subscription gets you shows to watch. But a monthly maintenance fee on a checking account, more often than not, gets you nothing extra at all. It's simply the price of not having met a requirement, whether that's a minimum balance, a certain number of debit transactions, or a qualifying direct deposit amount. This is where I want you to pause for a moment and think about your own account specifically. Not banks in general, not some hypothetical example, but the actual account you use every week. Do you know, right now, off the top of your head, whether you're being charged a monthly fee? A surprising number of people genuinely don't know the answer to that question, not because they're careless, but because the fee is often small enough to blend into the background of a busy statement full of other transactions. Has your bank ever charged you a fee that surprised you, something you didn't expect or didn't fully understand? If that's happened to you, I'd genuinely like to know, and I'll ask you to share that in a moment, because your experience might help someone else watching this recognize the same thing happening in their own account. Now, fees are only half of this story. The other half, and honestly, the half that surprises people the most, is interest, or more specifically, the lack of it. Here's something worth sitting with for a second. As of the middle of this year, the national average interest rate on checking accounts, according to the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, was just 0.07%. Let that sink in. 0.07%. On a typical checking account, if you had $10,000 sitting there, you'd earn something in the range of $7 a year in interest. $7 for an entire year on $10,000. Now here's the part that really matters. Many of the most well-known checking accounts, the big national names you'd recognize immediately, pay an annual percentage yield of exactly 0%. That means your money isn't growing at all while it sits there. And if that same account also charges a monthly fee, you're not just failing to earn anything, you're actually losing ground every single month. This is the mistake I mentioned a moment ago, the one that even careful, responsible retirees are still making without realizing it. It's not doing anything wrong exactly. It's simply staying with the same bank account you've had for years, sometimes decades, without ever stopping to ask whether it's still the right fit for where you are in life now. Banking habits, once they're set, tend to stay set, and banks count on that. Loyalty is comfortable, but comfortable isn't always the same thing as smart. I want to be fair here, because there's a reasonable explanation for why checking accounts pay so little interest, and understanding it actually helps put things in perspective. Checking accounts are designed for spending, not saving. Banks expect the money in a checking account to move in and out regularly, so they don't offer much of an incentive to keep it parked there. That's a completely reasonable business model, and it's not inherently unfair. The problem isn't that checking accounts pay low interest. The problem is when people leave large amounts of money sitting in a checking account for months or years at a time, essentially treating it like a savings account without realizing they're leaving potential earnings on the table. This is actually a really common pattern among retirees specifically. When you're no longer working and your income arrives in predictable deposits each month, there's a natural tendency to let a comfortable cushion build up in your checking account just in case. That instinct isn't wrong. Having accessible money for emergencies is smart. But there's a difference between keeping a reasonable buffer in checking and letting thousands of extra dollars sit there indefinitely, earning next to nothing, when even a modest savings account elsewhere could be working harder for you. So what does a better option actually look like? Let's talk about that, because this isn't about fear, it's about awareness. Some accounts, particularly ones built around modern online banking, are designed to avoid this problem altogether. For example, there's a checking account style that charges no monthly fees whatsoever and offers fee-free access to a very large network of ATMs, more than 60,000 machines nationwide. On top of that, some of these accounts offer cashback, around 1%, on debit card purchases up to a certain monthly spending limit. And for anyone who relies on a Social Security deposit or a pension direct deposit, some of these accounts will actually release your deposit up to 2 days earlier than a traditional bank would. When you're budgeting carefully every month, getting your money 2 days sooner isn't a small thing. Then there are accounts specifically built with people 50 and older in mind, sometimes called senior checking or golden checking accounts, that pay a small amount of interest, around 0.1%, while also refunding a portion of your ATM fees each month, up to around $8. And providing free personal checks. It's not a huge amount of interest. Nobody's getting rich off of 0.1%, but compare that to zero and compare it to paying $8 a month just to keep the account open, and you start to see a real difference. That's a swing of roughly $200 a year between the account that costs you money and the account that quietly pays you a little instead. Now, I want to pause here and be very clear about something, because this isn't about telling you your bank is doing something wrong or trying to trick you. Most banks are not acting in bad faith. They're businesses. And fees are simply part of how many of them operate. The issue isn't dishonesty. The issue is awareness. Most people simply never sit down and compare what they're paying against what else is out there because life is busy. And banking is one of those things we tend to set up once and never revisit. But here's a question worth asking yourself, honestly. When was the last time you actually looked at your bank statement line by line? Not just glanced at the balance, but really looked at every fee listed. If it's been a while, you're not alone. Most people go years without doing this. Let's talk about something else that matters just as much as fees and interest, and that's protection. Because at the end of the day, the account itself is only half the picture. How well that account protects your money is the other half, and honestly, the more important half. When you're evaluating whether your current bank account is serving you well, there are a few protections worth checking for. The first is something called zero liability protection. This means that if someone makes an unauthorized transaction using your debit card, you're not held responsible for that charge as long as you report it appropriately. The second is security features like two-factor authentication, transaction alerts that notify you the moment a purchase is made, and the ability to set spending limits on your card. The third, and this one is absolutely essential, is deposit insurance. Your money should be insured either by the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, which covers banks, or the National Credit Union Administration, which covers credit unions. This insurance is what protects your money even if the financial institution itself were to fail. And finally, there's data encryption, which is simply the technology banks use to scramble your personal information so it can't easily be intercepted or stolen. If you're not sure whether your current bank offers all of these protections, that's worth finding out. A quick phone call or a look at your bank's website can usually answer that question in a few minutes. Let's walk through those 4 protections just a bit more slowly, because I don't want to rush past any of them. Zero liability protection is exactly what it sounds like. If your debit card number is ever used by someone else without your permission, this protection means you're not held financially responsible for those charges, as long as you notify your bank in a reasonable amount of time after noticing the activity. This is different from your card simply being declined or blocked. It's about who absorbs the cost if fraud actually happens, and the answer should be the bank, not you. Two-factor authentication might sound technical, but it's actually a fairly simple idea. Instead of just typing in a password to access your account online, the bank sends a separate code, often by text message, that you also have to enter. This means that even if someone somehow got hold of your password, they still couldn't get into your account without also having access to your phone. Paired with that, transaction alerts notify you in real time, often within seconds, whenever a purchase is made on your account, so you're never the last to know if something looks off. Deposit insurance, whether through the FDIC for banks or the NCUA for credit unions, is perhaps the most important protection of all, because it doesn't just protect you from fraud, it protects your entire balance in the unlikely event that the institution itself runs into serious financial trouble. This is federal level protection, and it's one of the clearest, most objective ways to confirm that a bank or credit union is legitimate and trustworthy. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, this all makes sense, but is it really worth the hassle of switching banks? And that's a completely fair question. Switching banks does take some effort. You have to update your direct deposit information, move over any automatic payments, and get used to a new app or a new branch. I'm not going to pretend that's nothing, but here's a way to think about it that might help. If a fee is costing you around $100 a year, and a better account could not only eliminate that fee, but also pay you a small amount of interest instead, you're potentially looking at a difference of $200 to $300 a year. Over the course of retirement, that adds up to real money. Money that could go toward groceries, toward a visit with grandchildren, toward simply having a little more breathing room each month. The hassle of switching is temporary. The savings, if you choose the right account, continue for as long as you keep it. And honestly, the process of switching a bank account is far less complicated today than it used to be years ago. Most banks now have a straightforward way to update your direct deposit information, sometimes through a simple form, sometimes just by providing your new account and routing numbers to Social Security or your pension provider directly. Automatic bill payments can usually be updated in a single sitting, especially if you keep a written list of which companies draft money from your account each month. It's not something you have to do all at once either. Many people keep their old account open for a month or two during the transition, just to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, before closing it for good once everything has moved over smoothly. And there's something else worth mentioning, something that often gets overlooked. Convenience matters just as much as cost. If you prefer walking into a branch and speaking with a real person, that's completely valid, and it should factor into your decision. Some accounts are built around large branch and ATM networks, giving you access to thousands of locations nationwide, which can matter a great deal if you're not someone who wants to manage everything from a phone screen. Others are entirely online, which works beautifully for people who are comfortable with mobile banking, but might feel isolating if you prefer face-to-face service. Neither approach is wrong. It simply depends on what feels right and comfortable for you. I think it's worth saying clearly that switching to a lower fee or online-only account isn't automatically the right move for everyone, and I don't want to suggest that it is. If you genuinely value being able to walk into a branch, speak with someone face-to-face, and get help resolving a problem in person, that comfort has real value, even if it comes with a slightly higher monthly cost. The goal here isn't to push everyone toward the cheapest possible option. The goal is to make sure that whatever you're paying, whether it's $8 a month or nothing at all, you're paying it knowingly, and you're getting something in return that actually matters to you. An informed choice, even an expensive one, is completely different from a fee you didn't know you were paying. There's also a middle ground worth mentioning, because this isn't always an either-or decision. Some retirees keep their long-standing branch-based account open for the comfort and familiarity of in-person service, while moving a portion of their savings into a separate high-yield or fee-free account elsewhere, simply to let that money grow a little instead of sitting flat. You don't have to abandon a bank you trust. You can simply be more intentional about which account holds which portion of your money. Customer service is another piece of this that deserves real attention, and honestly, it's something people don't think to ask about until they need it. Before choosing or staying with any bank, it's worth knowing whether they offer phone support around the clock or only during limited hours. It's worth knowing how easy it is to actually reach a person when something goes wrong. Friendly, knowledgeable staff can make an enormous difference, especially for anyone who feels more comfortable talking things through rather than navigating an app or a website full of unfamiliar terms. Has your bank ever made you feel like you needed a finance degree just to understand your own statement? If banking language has ever left you confused or frustrated, that's not a reflection on you. It's a reflection on how complicated some of these institutions make things that should be simple. I'd also gently encourage you to think about how your bank handles the unexpected, because that's really when good service matters most. It's easy for any bank to look good on a normal, uneventful day. The real test comes when something goes wrong: a delayed direct deposit, a card that stops working while you're traveling, a charge on your statement you don't recognize. In those moments, you want to know that a phone call will actually connect you with someone who can help, rather than a maze of automated menus that never quite gets you where you need to go. If you've never had to test that with your own bank, it might be worth calling their customer service line just to see how the experience feels, even without a specific problem to report. That alone can tell you a lot. So let's bring this back together, because I want to leave you with something practical, not just something to think about. Here's what I'd encourage you to do this week. Pull out your most recent bank statement or log into your account online and take 5 minutes to really look at it. Look for a monthly maintenance fee. Look for the interest rate you're actually earning, if any. And ask yourself honestly whether the account you have today still makes sense for the life you're living now. Maybe it does, and that's wonderful. That means you're already in a good position. But if it doesn't, if you notice fees quietly draining money every month while your balance earns next to nothing, that's valuable information. It doesn't mean you have to switch banks tomorrow. It simply means you now know something you didn't know before, and that knowledge puts you back in control. Because that's really what this comes down to. Not fear, not urgency for the sake of urgency, but simply making sure that after decades of working hard to build your savings, that money is being treated with the same care and respect that you gave it while you were earning it. I also want to mention one more thing, because it's easy to overlook. If you do decide to look into a new account, take your time with the comparison. Don't just glance at the interest rate and assume that's the whole story. Look at the monthly fee, and more importantly, look at what it actually takes to avoid that fee, whether that's a minimum balance, a certain number of transactions, or a qualifying direct deposit each month. Some accounts make those requirements easy to meet without even trying. Others make them just difficult enough that you'll likely end up paying the fee most months anyway. Reading that fine print now, up front, saves you from an unpleasant surprise 6 months down the road. It's also worth asking directly, either on the phone or through a bank's website, whether there are any senior-specific accounts available. A number of banks and credit unions offer accounts designed specifically for customers over a certain age, often 50 or 62, that come with reduced or waived fees, small interest rates, or added perks like reimbursed ATM fees. These accounts aren't always advertised prominently, so sometimes you simply have to ask. It's a 5-minute conversation that could genuinely change what you're paying every month for the rest of your banking relationship with that institution. And if you do decide your current account is serving you just fine, that's a perfectly good outcome too. This isn't about creating dissatisfaction where none exists. It's about making sure that whatever you're paying and whatever you're earning, you know it clearly, rather than assuming everything is fine simply because nothing has gone wrong yet. Peace of mind that comes from actually checking is worth so much more than peace of mind that comes from simply not looking. If you've ever discovered a fee you didn't expect, or switched to a better account and noticed the difference, let everyone know in the comments below. Your experience could genuinely help another retiree watching this recognize the same thing in their own account. And sometimes hearing it from someone who's actually lived it means more than hearing it from anyone else. And if you know someone, a friend, a neighbor, a family member, who's been with the same bank for years without ever really checking whether it's still working in their favor, please consider sharing this video with them. It only takes a few minutes to watch, but it could genuinely save them real money over time. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today. Managing your money in retirement shouldn't feel complicated or overwhelming, and my hope is that you walk away from this feeling a little more informed, a little more confident, and a little more prepared to make sure your bank account is truly working for you, not quietly working against you. Take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next one.